The first time I realized my idea had been stolen, I was standing in the hallway outside Conference Room B, staring at my own words on a slide I hadn't created. My name is Rachel Turner. I'm 32, a senior brand strategist at a mid-sized marketing agency in Chicago called Northline Creative. We do campaigns for tech companies, direct-to-consumer brands, and once, for a regional grocery chain that thought TikTok was that dancing app. For 6 years, I've been the one who shows up early with a cold brew, stays late fixing decks that other people get credit for, and quietly makes sure the numbers in the footnotes actually match the claims on the slides. I'm good at my job, but I'm also the kind of woman corporate America trains itself to forget. Helpful, dependable, not loud enough to be leadership material, not quiet enough to be invisible. Until the day Ethan stole my idea, and I decided if he was going to pitch my campaign to the executive board, I was going to walk in with proof that it was mine, and I was going to press play in front of everyone. 1. The brainstorm. Where it all started, it started like any other Monday at Northline. Gray sky, grim coffee, Slack blowing up before 9 a.m. I swiped my Metro card, squeezed onto the red line, and scrolled through emails standing shoulder to shoulder with half of Chicago. By the time I walked into the office in the Loop, my phone already had 3 pings from my manager, Amanda, 8:07 a.m. Amanda, need you in at 8:45. New client brainstorm, big one. 8:09 a.m. Amanda, also, can you fix the metrics on Ethan's deck from last week? His CTR numbers are off. 8:10 a.m. Amanda, sorry. You're the only one I trust with the data. I read that last one twice. You're the only one I trust had become my unofficial job description. I grabbed cold brew from the kitchen, nodded to Jasmine from HR, and headed to Conference Room C, where someone had already wheeled in the giant digital whiteboard we saved for important meetings. The new client was a huge deal, Bright Nest, a national home goods brand trying to rebrand from your mom's catalog to cool, sustainable, millennial-friendly. If we landed this campaign, it meant bigger budgets, new hires, and 1 or 2 shiny titles. I showed up at 8:42. Ethan showed up at 8:59 with an oat milk latte, and AirPods still in his ears. If you met him at a bar, you'd probably like him. Tall, easy smile, expensive-looking sneakers. That vibe of someone who never had to fight to be heard in a room. If you worked with him, you learned fast that teamwork meant he talks. You build the deck. He gets the credit. Amanda opened the meeting with a smile that looked extra tight around the edges. Okay, you two, she said, clapping her hands together. Bright Nest is coming in hot. They're meeting the board in 3 weeks. We pitch the full campaign direction in 10 days. I want big ideas, no fear, no safe concepts. I flipped open my notebook. Ethan didn't bother. He leaned back in his chair, spinning a pen between his fingers. On the wall, the digital whiteboard showed their brief. Make Bright Nest the brand people think of when they think home that actually feels like me. Amanda clicked her stylus. We'll talk media mix later. Right now, we're in concept territory. What's our hook? What's the story we want people to feel? My brain started spinning. I'd read their entire 40-page brand audit on the train, twice. Okay, I said, lifting my head. What if instead of showing perfect homes, we show real ones? Amanda turned. Go on. Everyone thinks of home as something they'll get later, when they fixed everything, painted the walls, bought the nice couch, organized the pantry. But most of us are living in the before. Boxes still unpacked, mismatched plates, a random Target lamp that doesn't match anything. What if the campaign is called Welcome to Your Real Home? We highlight the stuff that makes a home actually feel personal, not Pinterest perfect. Bright Nest products are woven into that reality. Messy, Loved, lived in. Amanda's eyes lit up. Tagline? I thought for a second. It doesn't have to be perfect to feel like home, or real homes, real you, something like that. Without looking at me, Ethan sat up and finally engaged. That's interesting, he said slowly, as if he were tasting the idea and deciding whether to own it. What if we take that and build it into a before and after concept, but not in the traditional way? Instead of ugly to pretty, it's like emotionally disconnected to emotionally real. He gestured at the screen, now standing. Picture this: a split screen social campaign. On the left, the generic catalog home. On the right, someone's actual apartment, with the brightness stuff integrated. We feature their story. Like, this is the couch where I cried after my breakup. This is the mug I drink from every Sunday. Make home feel like a character. Amanda nodded. Yes, yes. I like that. Rachel, capture this? I swallowed. Capture this? I had just pitched the core idea. Ethan had just elaborated, but I was used to it. My brain came up with threads. He walked in and wrapped them around himself. Yeah, I said, forcing my face neutral. I'm recording the session, remember? Zoom's running. I'll also type up a concept outline after this. That's the thing about our agency. Ever since the pandemic, they kept the habit of having every brainstorm on Zoom, even when we were all in the office. For hybrid employees, they said. Really, it was so no one could complain about not being included in ideation. So while we sat in Conference C, a little red dot glowed at the top of the screen. Recording. I didn't think much about it then. Later, it would become the sharpest weapon I'd ever wield. 2. The slow realization. We spent an hour building on the idea. I riffed on user-generated content, hashtagged photos of real homes, short-form video testimonials, micro-influencers in different cities showing their messy, real spaces. Ethan talked about celebrity tie-ins and premium positioning. Amanda kept saying, "This is good. This is really good." After the session, she turned to us. "I'm assigning this one to you two as co-leads," she said. "Rachel, you drive the strategy and research. Ethan, you lead the client-facing presentation. You're both strong where the other isn't. Dream team." My stomach did a little drop. Strategy and research meant I'd be doing the heavy lifting in the background. Client-facing lead meant Ethan's face would be on the screen when it mattered. "Sure," I said, because what else was I supposed to say? "I'll start building a concept deck today." Ethan grinned, clapping me on the shoulder like a bro. "We got this, Rach." I hate being called Rach at work. Back at my desk, a white IKEA rectangle in a sea of identical desks, I opened a fresh Google Slides deck and titled it Brightness Campaign Concept, Real Home, Real You. I built out the insight. People's real homes don't look like ads. The concept, welcome to your real home. The emotional hook, home is about the life you live, not the photos you post. The tagline options, mood boards, diverse lived-in spaces, kids' toy clutter, plant corners, messy bookshelves, content pillars, stories, spaces, stuff. I added notes on the side of the slides with my thought process. I linked to research on aspirational clutter, TikTok trends about unaesthetic houses, and an article about how Gen Z rejects perfection posts. At 6:15 p.m., the office half empty, Ethan sauntered over. "Anything I can do to help?" he asked. I knew the script. This was the part where he offered help. I did everything. And he came in at the last second to massage the slides. "You can start roughing out some example social posts," I said evenly. "But I'd really like to keep the strategic narrative consistent. So let's make sure we review together before anything gets sent up to Amanda." He nodded. eyes flicking over my monitor. Totally. I'll just go in and clean things up. Make it client ready. You know I've got the storytelling thing down. I forced a smile. Yeah, I know. He walked away. On my screen, the little icon with his face popped up at the top of the slides window a minute later. I worked 2 more hours, then went home to my 1-bedroom apartment in Lakeview, reheated leftover pad thai, and watched Abbott Elementary with one eye while editing copy on my laptop. By Wednesday, the deck was polished enough that I felt cautiously proud. It flowed. It made sense. It felt like me. Amanda pinged us in Slack at 9:12 a.m. Amanda, can we have a first look internal pitch Friday at 3? I want you guys to present the concept to the creative leadership team before we show anything to Bright Nest. I typed. Rachel, yep, deck should be ready. Ethan, I'll own the presenting. Rachel, you're cool to handle Q&A on the data. That, I'll own the presenting, hit a nerve. I stared at the Slack message, fingers hovering over my keyboard. I could feel it already. The meeting where he stood at the front saying, I wanted to explore. And I thought, while my work sat behind his words like a ghost. I started typing, Rachel, I'd like to split the presenting. I can walk through the insight plus concept narrative. Then I paused, deleted, typed instead, Rachel, sure, I'll cover data and support. I hated myself a little for that. On Thursday, when I logged in, I noticed the file name had been changed. What had been? Brightnest Campaign Concept. Real Home, Real You. Rachel Draft was now. Brightnest, Real Home Campaign. Ethan, Rachel. The order of names flipped. A tiny detail, but my chest tightened. I clicked version history. A list popped up. Created by Rachel Turner, Monday 9:34 a.m., renamed by Ethan Cole, Wednesday 7:02 p.m. I let my eyes linger on the timestamp. I had been at home stirring a pot of tomato soup while Ethan sat in the office renaming my work. It was a small thing, but every giant roaring fire starts with something small. 3. The internal pitch and the shock. Friday at 3 p.m., the leadership team filed into conference room A. We had Amanda, our account director, Luis, the creative director, Priya, head of strategy, Mark, the VP of client services, and Allie, our junior designer, who'd been dragged in to manage the screen share. I sat at the end of the table, laptop open, heart pounding a little too fast. Ethan stood near the screen with Amanda, laughing about some podcast he'd just discovered. On the wall, the first slide of the deck glowed. Brightnest, Real Home, Real You concept presentation. Prepared by Ethan Cole and Rachel Turner. I stared at the order of those names. I hadn't changed it. Ethan had. Fine, I told myself. Let the work speak. Amanda opened the meeting. Thanks everyone for making time. Bright Nest is huge for us. Ethan and Rachel have been working on a campaign platform I'm really excited about. Ethan, take it away. He smiled, clicked to the next slide, and started talking. Thanks, Amanda. When I started thinking about Bright Nest, my jaw clenched. When I started thinking about Bright Nest, I darted a look at Amanda, at Priya, at Luis. No one flinched. This was normal. The presenter owns the story, right? Ethan kept going. I kept coming back to this idea of real homes. You know, not the perfectly styled Instagram places, but the spaces where people are actually living their lives. So I came up with this concept called Welcome to Your Real Home. Something icy washed over me. I came up with this concept. He clicked to the insight slide. The words I had written stared back at me from the wall. Insight? Our homes are not magazine spreads. They're where we survive, celebrate, break down, and rebuild. Opportunity. Bright Nest can own real home over perfect home. Ethan paced a little, hands animated. Our audience is over the aspirational BS. They don't want to see yet another immaculate white kitchen with a $300 candle. They want to see the coffee-stained mug they've had since college, the couch they cried on after their breakup. I wanted to lean into that. I wanted, I wanted, I wanted. Each sentence felt like a finger on my windpipe. It wasn't like he changed the idea. He didn't even transform it. He just absorbed it. He wore it like a suit I had tailored for him. I glanced around the room. Luis nodded thoughtfully, clearly into it. Mark scribbled something in his notebook. Priya looked aware. Her eyes flicked from the slide to me to Ethan and back again. When Ethan clicked to the strategy slide, he said, "Rachel's going to go into the numbers behind this in a minute. She did great work there. But first, I want to walk you through how I see this manifesting emotionally." I felt my cheeks burn. How he saw it. He walked through the scenarios I'd written in the speaker notes. The single dad in Detroit, making a bright nest meal on chipped plates. The queer couple in Austin, painting their rental walls a not landlord-approved color. The messy bedroom that still feels safe. My throat tightened. When he finally turned and said, "Rachel, do you want to jump in on the data?" It sounded less like a collaboration and more like a concession. I stood, smoothed my skirt, and walked to the front. "Sure," I said, voice steady. I explained the numbers, the research, the TikTok trends. I could hear my own voice sounding detached, like I was presenting someone else's homework. Priya asked a question. I answered. Luis asked about creative applications. Ethan jumped in before I could respond. By the end of the meeting, the leadership team was glowing. "This is strong," Mark said. "Really strong. Ethan, you've got a great instinct for where consumers are emotionally." My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might puke. Amanda chimed in. "Yeah, this feels like exactly where Bright Nest needs to go. Rachel, great support on the strategy and data. Ethan, I want you to lead the pitch to the client and then to the board if they like it." I heard the words, but they sounded underwater. Led the pitch. To the client. To the board. With my idea. We filed out of the room. Ethan gave me a half hug in the hallway. "Crushed it, Rach. You made me look good in there." And that was the moment. Not when he said, "I came up with this concept." Not when the VP pinned the idea to his instinct. It was when he casually said, "You made me look good." Something inside me clicked over from anger to clarity. No more. 4. The decision to fight back that night. I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling of my apartment, listening to the upstairs neighbor walk around, the distant sirens, the hum of the heater kicking in. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the slide with prepared by Ethan Cole and Rachel Turner, and heard his voice say, "When I started thinking about Bright Nest, I'd been here before in smaller ways. The junior copywriter who got praised for tightening a tagline I had written from scratch. The email Amanda sent to the whole team congratulating Ethan on a campaign I'd worked 80-hour weeks on. The raises that never quite matched the responsibility I carried. But this time, it wasn't just about ego. Bright Nest was a career-making account. If this campaign landed, whoever was seen as its brain would get visibility with the executive board, bigger accounts, a straight shot to promotion, maybe even a title change. And I'd be, what? The person who supported, the woman behind the curtain. I rolled over and grabbed my phone. On impulse, I opened my email and searched. Bright Nest brainstorm recording. There it was. Subject, recording, Bright Nest kickoff. Brainstorm, 8:45 a.m. Monday, from Zoom to Rachel Turner. My heart kicked. I tapped it open. There was a link to the video stored in our cloud, auto-generated because I'd been the one to start the meeting as host. I clicked it. The video loaded. There we were. Amanda at the head of the table, Ethan spinning a pen, me with my notebook. I skipped ahead. What if the campaign is called Welcome to Your Real Home? My own voice said from the speakers. We highlight the stuff that makes a home actually feel personal, not Pinterest perfect. Hearing it from outside my own head made it feel undeniable. My idea, my exact words. Ethan's voice came in after. That's interesting. What if we take that and build it into build on, not invent? I sat up in bed. I replayed it. Again. Again. Somewhere between the third and fourth replay, my fear shifted into something razor sharp. I had proof. Not a vague, well, I kind of said something like that first. Not just a Slack message or a timestamp in a doc. A recording, linked to my name, with my idea clearly stated before Ethan's yes and. I could feel a plan forming before I even fully admitted it to myself. If Ethan wanted to sell my idea to the client and the board, fine. But I was going to change the audience for that recording. It wasn't just going to sit in my inbox. I was going to take it to the people who actually mattered. The ones everyone else was afraid of. The executive board. 5. Building the case. The next week was a blur of resentment and performance. By day, I acted like the model teammate. I showed up early, tweaked slides, pulled stats, provided quotes for Ethan's speaking notes. I sat with him in small huddle rooms, walking him through narratives I'd crafted. By night, I became someone else. I turned my laptop into a war room. First, I pulled every artifact I could find. The Zoom recording of the brainstorm, downloaded to my personal drive as a backup. The calendar invite showing I had scheduled and hosted the meeting. The original Google Slides file I created, with version history showing, created by Rachel Turner at 9:34 a.m. Monday. The renaming of the file by Ethan, time-stamped. My notebook pages with the early phrases, "Welcome to your real home." It doesn't have to be perfect to feel like home. Real home, real you. I scanned the notebook pages with my phone and saved them as PDFs. Then I opened the Zoom recording and, using the built-in editor, clipped the key part. From the moment Amanda said, "Okay, ideas," to the moment Ethan said, "That's interesting. What if?" 4 minutes and 32 seconds of solid, clear audio and video with my voice pitching, him responding. I exported it as Bright Nest Concept Notch Origin and Notch Clip.mp4. Next, I opened the Google Slides deck and went into version history. I took screenshots, the original title with my name, the timestamp note, created by Rachel Turner, the later note, renamed by Ethan Cole. I dropped them into a separate document and annotated them. I also exported the early version of the deck as a PDF and the final one as a PDF, and used Compare Docs to create a list of what had changed. Spoiler, not much. Most of the structure, language, and strategy remained my work. Ethan had changed some adjectives, added a slide with celebrity partner ideas, and rearranged a few bullet points. He'd put his name first on the cover. That was it. By Wednesday, I had a folder on my desktop labeled Bright Nest Evidence with subfolders: recording, deck versions, notes, emails. I pulled the email from Amanda, assigning strategy and research to me and client-facing to Ethan. I highlighted the lines where she said, "Rachel, your concept is strong." I pulled Slack screenshots where I'd written, "What if we call it Welcome to Your Real Home and focus on the lived-in reality?" And Ethan had replied, "Yeah, that could be cool." I wasn't looking for gotcha moments. I was building a pattern, a clear, undeniable narrative. Rachel originated the concept. Ethan positioned himself as its author. But I knew evidence wasn't enough. Corporate America doesn't respond to, "This isn't fair." It responds to risk, legal risk, reputational risk, financial risk. If I walked in there and cried about my stolen idea, they'd label me emotional and not a team player. If I walked in there and demonstrated that our agency might be misrepresenting intellectual contributions to a major client and that I had documentation, I knew they'd listen very differently. So I did one more thing. I opened our agency's employee handbook and searched the PDF for ethics, then intellectual property, then attribution. There it was, buried on page 37. Northline Creative is committed to accurate attribution of work and ideas. Misrepresentation of authorship or taking credit for others' work may be subject to disciplinary action, up to and including termination. I took a screenshot of that too. And just in case, I also printed it out and slid it into a folder. Because when you're a woman in corporate America about to call out a golden boy, you don't rely on digital trails alone, you bring paper. 6. The night before the pitch. The client pitch went well. Of course it did. Ethan stood in front of the Brightness team on Zoom, wearing his "I'm excited to partner with you" smile, and walked them through his vision. Our team wanted to really honor your brand's soul, he said, so I developed this platform. Welcome to your real home. Developed. He used the word developed. I watched in a Zoom tile next to Amanda, my jaw tight, my cursor hovering over the leave meeting button more times than I'd admit. When the Brightness CMO smiled and said, "This is exactly the direction we've been hoping someone would bring us." Amanda's eyes shined. When the call ended, she unmuted in our internal debrief. "You two knocked it out of the park," she said. "Brightness loved it. Mark's already setting up a session with the executive board next week to align the bigger budget. Ethan, I want you front and center in that room. Rachel, of course, you'll be there to field anything on the analytics." Of course. That night, I went home and poured myself a glass of wine. I stared at the glass for a minute, then poured it back into the bottle. No. If I was going to do what I planned to do, I wanted my head crystal clear. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, opened my evidence folder, and then opened a new document. Subject: Brightness Campaign Attribution. Request for clarification before board pitch. I typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, I wrote, "Mark, before we go into the Brightness executive board pitch next week, I wanted to flag something important regarding the origin and authorship of the Real Home, Real You. Welcome to your Real Home campaign concept. I'm proud of the work our team has done, and I'm excited about the direction. That said, I've become increasingly uncomfortable with how the concept is being attributed internally and externally, particularly in recent meetings where it has been described as Ethan's idea. For clarity, and in the interest of adhering to Northline's own ethics policy on accurate attribution of work, see attached excerpt, I want to ensure the record accurately reflects that. I originated the core real home versus perfect home, welcome to your real home, and real home, real you, concept and framing during our initial Brightness brainstorm on date. This is documented in the Zoom recording of that brainstorm, which I hosted, as well as in the initial deck I created immediately afterwards. Ethan contributed valuable elaborations and client presentation skills, but the foundational insight and platform originated with me. I have attached supporting documentation, recording clip, deck version history, notes, to avoid any ambiguity. I'm bringing this to you now privately because I want to resolve it directly and professionally before we are in a room with the client's executive board and potentially misrepresent authorship. To be clear, I'm not trying to minimize anyone else's contributions. I simply want the attribution and representation to reflect reality, especially in a high visibility setting that will impact performance reviews, promotions, and future opportunities. I would appreciate the opportunity to discuss how we present this campaign's origin story at the board pitch so that it honors both collaboration and the factual timeline. Best, Rachel. I sat back. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was firm, not hysterical. It referenced policy. It had receipts. But I wasn't naive. If I sent this to Mark alone, he could ignore it. Or worse, he could warn Ethan and Amanda, and they'd circle the wagons. So I did something scary. I ICC'd Amanda, my direct manager, Priya, head of strategy, who'd seen me in that first meeting, HR, the generic HR inbox I attached, the clip of the brainstorm recording, the screenshotted version, history, the handbook excerpt. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I thought about all the times women get labeled difficult and not a team player the minute they stop being grateful for being allowed in the room. I thought about how exhausted I felt, always pouring my brain into other people's careers. I clicked send. Then I closed the laptop and went to take a shower, because if I sat there watching my inbox, I was going to throw up. When I came back, hair still wet, my phone was buzzing. 3 emails, 1 from Mark, 1 from Amanda, 1 from HR. 7. The fallout. And the setup I opened Mark's first. Mark. Hi, Rachel. Thanks for flagging this. This is obviously important. Let's not make any assumptions over email. I'd like to pull you, Ethan, and Amanda into a quick meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. to walk through your concerns and the documentation. I've CC'd HR to join as well. Mark. My stomach tensed. HR. I opened HR's email. HR. Hi, Rachel. Thank you for bringing this forward. As Mark noted, we take our ethics policy and concerns about attribution seriously. I'll plan to join the discussion tomorrow at 9 a.m. In the meantime, please feel free to add any additional documentation to the folder link I've created here. Link. Jenna, HR business partner. Okay, professional, non-judgmental. Then I opened Amanda's. This one hurt more. Amanda, Rachel, I wish you had come to me directly before looping in Mark and HR on something like this. I'm surprised and a bit disappointed. We can talk more tomorrow, but I want you to know that I see you as a key part of this team, and it's important we handle conflicts in a way that doesn't undermine trust. I closed my eyes. Of course. I'd gone over her head. I'd looped in HR. I'd undermined trust. Never mind that she sat there and watched Ethan claim my idea, and when Mark praised his instinct, she said nothing. Trust only matters until it protects someone we like. I slept badly. At 8:58 a.m. the next morning, I walked into conference room D with a manila folder under my arm. Ethan was already there, sitting with his arms folded, jaw tight. Amanda stood by the window, scrolling through her phone. Mark walked in behind me, followed by Jenna from HR, a woman in her mid-30s with calm eyes and a notebook. Okay, Mark said, closing the door. Let's talk this through. We sat. Mark looked at me first. Rachel, you raised the concern, so I'd like to give you space to explain it in your own words. I swallowed, forcing my voice steady. Sure. The short version is, I originated the Bright Nest Real Home, Real You concept in the initial brainstorm. Ethan has been increasingly positioned as the sole creator of that idea. That misrepresentation is now reaching the client, and soon, the executive board. I think that's inaccurate and unfair, and it violates our own ethics policy on attribution. Ethan shifted in his chair. That's not how I see it, he cut in. We brainstormed together. You threw out some words, sure, but I shaped it into a real platform. You're trying to claim ownership over something that was clearly collaborative. I met his eyes. Ethan, I'm not denying you contributed, I said, but the initial concept, The framing of real homes versus perfect Pinterest homes, the welcome to your real home line, the real home, real you platform, those were mine. I have the video from the brainstorm if we want to review it. Mark held up a hand. One at a time. Rachel, you mentioned documentation. Can you walk us through what you sent? I opened my folder and slid a printed copy of the ethics policy excerpt onto the table. Then I slid a screenshot of the Zoom recording email and the version history of the deck. I hosted and recorded the initial brainstorm, I said. In that meeting, I clearly articulated the core campaign concept. Ethan responded to it, built on it. After the meeting, I created the original deck. That's not me saying, I did everything, he did nothing. It's me saying, there is a factual timeline of idea origin, and it has been distorted. Jenna from HR leaned forward. Do you have the recording here? She asked. It might help to ground this in something objective. My heart thudded. Yes, I said. I have the clip. I pulled out my laptop, opened the file, and turned it so they could see. In the little rectangle on screen, my face appeared at the conference table. We watched. What if the campaign is called Welcome to Your Real Home? Video Me said. Amanda on screen leaned forward. I like that. Ethan on screen said, That's interesting. What if we take that and... I pressed pause. Silence fell. The air in the room shifted. Amanda looked uncomfortable. Ethan's jaw clenched tighter. Mark cleared his throat. Okay, he said slowly. That's pretty clear that you were the first to articulate the core platform language, Rachel. Ethan jumped in, voice rising. That doesn't mean it's solely hers, he protested. We're a creative agency. We riff. One person says something, someone else builds on it. I'm the one who made it into something polished. I'm the one who's been selling it to the client. Amanda nodded. He's right that collaboration is our norm, she said carefully. We don't usually get into who said what first to this degree. I looked at her. So if a junior copywriter walks in tomorrow and says, just do it, and someone else sells it, does that mean it's everyone's idea? I asked. Or do we care who actually came up with the line? Her lips tightened. Jenna spoke quietly. I think there are two things here, she said. One is that collaboration is real. The other is that attribution matters, especially when we're talking about performance, promotions, and external representation. Our policy doesn't say no one can collaborate. It says misrepresenting authorship can lead to disciplinary action. She looked at Ethan. Ethan, have you described this campaign to others as your idea, or as something you and Rachel co-created? He looked at her, then at Mark. I've said we most of the time, he said. If I said I a couple of times, it was shorthand. We all know Rachel's good with data. I'm better at client-facing storytelling. My teeth sank into the side of my tongue. Jenna turned to me. Rachel, what outcome are you looking for? She asked. That's important to clarify. This was the moment. I inhaled, exhaled. I want three things, I said. First, I want it acknowledged, on the record, that I originated this campaign concept. Second, I want that reflected in how we talk about it to Bright Nest and to the executive board. That doesn't mean Ethan can't present, but it means we don't frame it as something he developed alone. Third, I want this to inform performance reviews and promotion paths. I have spent years being the person behind the scenes. This is the clearest, cleanest proof I've ever had of my strategic value, and I don't want it dismissed as just a collaboration. Silence. Mark nodded slowly. That seems reasonable, he said. Amanda? She hesitated. I didn't realize the extent to which the narrative had shifted, she said finally. I admit I may have contributed to that unknowingly in how I praised Ethan in the internal pitch. That's on me. She looked at me. Rachel, You are one of the strongest strategists we have. I don't want you to feel like your work is invisible. I'm sorry I made you feel that way. We can absolutely adjust how we frame the campaign in the board pitch. Ethan scoffed. So what? I get thrown under the bus now? He asked. In front of the board? After I've been prepping to lead this thing? I looked at him, something like calm settling over me. No, I said. You'll get what you've always gotten. The spotlight, the microphone, the first introduction. I leaned forward. The difference is that when you stand up there and talk about your idea, you're going to do it knowing that the board has already seen who actually said it first. He frowned. What does that mean? I closed my laptop. It means I'm done asking permission to exist in the background, I said. I sent all the same documentation to Mark and HR that I brought here. If we walk into that room and you act like this is solely yours, you're not just stepping on me. You're making the organization lie to itself. Jenna raised a hand. Let's de-escalate, she said. Here's what I propose as next steps. 1. Mark and Amanda will align on how the Bright Nest campaign origin is described at the board pitch. It should accurately reflect Rachel's role in originating the core concept and Ethan's role in building and presenting it. 2. Going forward, we'll be more explicit about attribution in major campaign summaries and performance reviews. 3. We'll document this conversation as a coaching moment. There won't be any formal discipline at this time, but we'll flag expectations around attribution for both of you. She looked from Ethan to me. Does that address your concerns, Rachel? It wasn't everything. Part of me wanted Ethan marched out with the cardboard box, but it was more than I'd ever gotten before. It's a start, I said. I still think this is overblown, Ethan muttered. He had no idea, because I hadn't told them everything. 8. The boardroom and the recording. The Bright Nest Executive Board meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday at 10 a.m. It wasn't at our office. It was at their headquarters, a sleek, glass-walled complex in the suburbs with a lobby that smelled like money and lemon-scented cleaning products. Our team pulled up in 2 cars. In the first, Mark and Amanda. In the second, me, Ethan, and Luis. I sat in the back seat, looking out the window, folder on my lap. Inside the folder, a printed 1-page concept origin summary that Mark had asked me to write, outlining how the idea had formed in the brainstorm. A USB drive with the 4-minute concept clip from the Zoom recording. The ethics policy excerpt, just in case. I had no intention of blindsiding anyone, but I also wasn't going to pretend I didn't have what I had. Ethan twisted around from the front seat, looking at me. You're not seriously going to, play that video in there, are you? He asked. His tone was half joking, half nervous. I met his eyes. Depends how honest you are, I said. He scoffed. This whole thing is ridiculous, he muttered. You know they don't care who said what first. They care if the campaign converts. He wasn't entirely wrong, but I'd stopped caring about being convenient. We walked into the building, checked in at the front desk, put on visitor badges. The boardroom was everything you'd expect. A ridiculously long table, floor-to-ceiling windows, a giant screen, a catered coffee bar in the corner with pastries no one would eat. The Bright Nest CMO, Karen, greeted us with that polished warmth executive women perfect after decades of walking a tightrope. Great to see you all again, she said. We're excited to share this with the board. We plugged in our laptops, tested the screen share, arranged our printouts. At 10:03, the board members started filing in, 8 people in total. The CEO, gray hair, navy suit, watch that probably cost more than my car. The CFO, sharp eyes, quieter. 2 independent directors who looked like they sat on 6 boards each. A younger woman in a bold blazer and sneakers. chief customer officer, who actually seemed awake, the general counsel, who noticed every detail, and two others I didn't catch titles for. When everyone had settled, Karen nodded to Mark. "Let's get started," she said. Mark stood, smiled, did the usual pleasantries. Then he said the sentence that made my heart skip. "We're here today to present a campaign platform developed by our team, led strategically by Rachel Turner, with Ethan Cole as our primary client-facing lead, that we believe can define Brightnest's brand for the next decade. Strategically led by me." The words landed in the room like a small, honest bomb. I saw Ethan's jaw flex. Karen smiled at me, surprised. "Oh," she said. "Rachel, we didn't get to hear as much from you last time. I'm glad you're here." It was a tiny acknowledgement, but I grabbed onto it like a handrail. We kicked off. Ethan still did most of the speaking. He did what he does best: charmed, gestured, told stories. But the script had shifted. Where he usually would have said, "I wanted to explore," he now said, "Our strategist Rachel surfaced a powerful insight." Where he used to say, "When I came up with," he now said, "In our brainstorm, Rachel framed the campaign as welcome to your real home, and from there we built." The first time he said my name, I almost didn't react. The second time, I saw the chief customer officer glance at me with interest. Halfway through, during a pause between sections, the CEO leaned forward. "This is strong," he said. "I'm curious. Can you walk us through how you arrived at this real home idea? There's a lot of talk in the market about authenticity these days. How did you make sure this wasn't just jumping on a buzzword?" Mark looked at me. "Rachel, do you want to take that?" he asked. My pulse spiked. This was it. I stood, smoothing my blazer. "Absolutely," I said. I walked to the front of the room, feeling every pair of eyes on me. "We started with one question," I said. "If Brightness disappeared tomorrow, what emotional gap would your customers feel? Not just, where will I get my throw pillows, but what part of my life feels a little less grounded?" So we ran listening sessions, social sentiment analysis, trend audits. And what kept coming up wasn't, "I want a pretty home." It was, "I want my home to feel like me." I clicked to a slide I'd added late the night before. Real home, real you, origin. On it was a simple, clean timeline graphic. Initial brainstorm, concept articulated by Rachel. Team build, input from Ethan and others. Strategy development, Rachel. Presentation design and delivery, Ethan and team. "This isn't about one lone genius having an idea in a vacuum," I said, glancing briefly at Ethan without lingering. "Our process is collaborative, but it's also structured. In our very first brainstorm, I framed the campaign as welcome to your real home, positioning Brightness not as the brand of perfection, but as the brand of lived-in reality. From there, our creative team, including Ethan, built scenarios, visuals, and executions on top of that foundation. The real home platform is what everything else ladders up to." I let that sink in. The CEO nodded slowly. "Do you have documentation of those early sessions?" he asked. "I like to see that a strategy has roots, not just retrofitted language." I didn't look at Mark. I didn't look at Ethan. I pulled the USB drive from my folder, walked to the screen, and held it up. "Yes," I said. "We actually have a short clip from our initial brainstorm. We record all of them as standard practice for our process. With your permission, I can play the part where the core concept comes together. It's about 4 minutes." The room went very still. For a split second, I felt the weight of everyone behind me. Ethan's panic, Mark's surprise, Amanda's tension. But Karen smiled. "I'd love to see that," she said. "As long as your team is comfortable." I turned around. I didn't say anything. I let the silence ask the question. Mark cleared his throat. Yes, he said finally. We're comfortable with that. I plugged in the USB, pulled up the file, and hit play. There we were, on the giant screen now. Rachel in a conference room, notebook in hand. Ethan spinning his pen. Amanda at the head of the table. What if the campaign is called Welcome to Your Real Home? My video self said. We highlight the stuff that makes a home actually feel personal, not Pinterest perfect. We watched Ethan respond. That's interesting. What if we take that and build it into? I pressed pause right after that line, turned back to the room. So, that's where we started, I said calmly. A clear platform idea, articulated early, then developed collaboratively into what you've seen today. The general counsel sat forward, steepling his fingers. I have to say, he said dryly, I've been in a lot of presentations. I've never seen an agency show their receipts like that. There was a ripple of quiet laughter, but it wasn't mocking. It was impressed. The CEO glanced at Karen. You didn't tell me you hired people who recorded their own brainstorms, he said. I like this level of rigor. Karen shot me a look that made my spine straighten. I didn't know they did either, she said, but I like it too. I walked back to my seat, pulse hammering but hands steady. Ethan's face was a mix of colors. Embarrassment, anger, something almost like fear. We finished the presentation. The board asked smart, tough questions. I answered most of the strategic ones. Ethan handled the performative bits. When it was over, the CEO stood, shook Mark's hand, then looked at me. Good work, he said. This feels grounded. That's rare. He didn't say good work to Ethan. He didn't have to. The difference was obvious. 9. The checkmate. The car ride back to the office was quiet. Louis scrolled through his phone. Ethan stared out the window, jaw tight. I clutched my folder, exhausted. When we got back, Amanda asked me to step into her office. I closed the door behind me. She leaned against her desk, arms crossed, face unreadable for a moment. Then she sighed. What you did in there was bold, she said. I didn't flinch. It was honest, I said, and accurate. She studied me. Ethan is furious, she said. He feels like you ambushed him. I didn't ambush him, I replied. I told him I had the recording. I told all of you I had the recording. I offered the board a transparent look at our process. They liked it. She couldn't argue with that. A part of me wishes you'd let us handle it internally, she said. But another part of me, she shook her head, a tiny smile ghosting her lips. Another part of me is proud. I blinked. I've watched you quietly prop up this team for years, she said. I should have given you more visible credit sooner. That's on me. But I think today may have done more for your reputation here than any performance review I could have written. My chest tightened. Any performance review. This is going to change things, isn't it? I asked. She nodded. Yes, she said, starting with titles. 2 weeks later, my promotion announcement hit Slack. We're excited to announce that Rachel Turner has been promoted to Associate Strategy Director. The message highlighted my work on Bright Nest, calling out my vision and leadership, and ability to surface and articulate core insights that define campaigns. For once, the words matched reality. Ethan, for his part, didn't get fired. He wasn't marched out with a box, but something fundamental shifted. People watched him differently in brainstorms. When he started a sentence with, I've been thinking, I could see eyes flick to me, to others, as if silently asking, whose thoughts are those really? He stopped renaming decks. He stopped forgetting to mention collaborators. And he never again called it his idea in a room I was in. Did he resent me? Absolutely. But resentment can't erase the sound of my voice. projected on a 10-foot screen in front of a corporate board, clearly saying the words he tried to own. 10. The new normal months passed. Bright Nest rolled out the campaign nationwide. You've probably seen it, if you live in the States. The commercial with the single mom in a cluttered kitchen, laughing with her kid over burnt pancakes. The subway posters with mismatched furniture and handwritten notes that say, "This is where I decided to quit the job that was killing me." Or, "This is where my friends carried me through my divorce." The Instagram carousel of real homes with Bright Nest products tagged, not as the star, but as part of the backdrop. Every time I see one, there's a little flicker of disbelief. I did that. We did that, sure, but I know where it started. Sometimes, when one of the ads pops up in my feed, I screenshot it and tuck it into a folder on my phone labeled Wins. On bad days, I scroll through that folder, not to stoke my ego, but to remind myself that I wasn't crazy, that I didn't imagine my own talent, that my brain isn't just a supporting character in someone else's story. At work, things are different. I'm in more high-level meetings now. When new accounts come in, people say, "We should get Rachel's brain on this." The interns gravitate toward me, asking how I got to where I am. Sometimes I tell them about Bright Nest. I don't show them the recording, but I do tell them this. I used to think that if I just worked hard enough, the right people would notice, I say. That if I kept my head down and produced good work, the credit would naturally come. It doesn't always. They nod, a little nervously. "So what do you do?" one of them asked me recently. I looked at her, 24, eager, brilliant, already deferring to louder voices. "You gather receipts?" I said. "You document your contributions. You share your ideas out loud, in rooms where there's a record. You advocate for yourself before resentment turns you bitter." I paused. "And if someone steals your idea," I added, "you don't just swallow it because you're scared of drama. You decide what kind of story you want to tell about yourself later." She frowned. "What do you mean?" I thought of Ethan, pacing in that conference room. I thought of my own voice echoing from the speakers in the boardroom. "One day," I said, "you're going to look back at these years and tell someone what happened. A friend, a therapist, a kid, maybe even an audience online. Do you want to say, 'I let them take credit for my work because I didn't want to rock the boat'? Or do you want to say, 'I called it out, calmly, clearly, with proof'?" Her eyes widened. "And did it work?" she asked. I smiled. "You're talking to an associate strategy director who once sat silently in the back of the room," I said. "What do you think? I didn't blow up the company. I didn't scream or flip tables. I didn't turn into the office villain. All I did was take a recording that already existed, the truth, and move it from my inbox to the biggest room in the house. I didn't just let them use my idea. I made them see me. And now, whenever I walk into a conference room and someone starts a brainstorm, I glance up at the little red dot on Zoom, the one that says recording. This time, it doesn't feel like surveillance. It feels like insurance. Like a quiet promise that if anyone ever tries to erase me again, I won't just disappear. I'll hit play.